How's it going, everybody? Combo here. Today we have another tier list, this time for the mid-season patch in Season 5 of the Finals. The mid-season patch actually shook up the meta quite a bit. There were quite a few nerfs, a couple buffs for weapons that, desperately needed it. But nonetheless, as I said when I made my first tier list for Season 5, I was going to do one at the beginning, one at the middle, and one at the end. So we find ourselves here in the middle. As a bit of context, I'll explain what the tiers mean. It's pretty standard, right? S is probably needs a nerf, very, very strong. A is probably what I call the gold standard, like this weapon's viable. It's not the best in class, like it doesn't overshadow everything, but there really isn't a situation where you can use this weapon and it's going to be bad for you. B tier, of course, is just slightly above the A tier. Not good in every single situation, but the situations that it is good in, it is very good. C tier is kind of mid, maybe needs a little bit of help. D tier is, below average, if C tier is average. And finally, F tier is, this weapon needs changed, immediately, and it's absolutely horrendous. I think you'll be shocked to see that there won't be many weapons in this tier. Probably none at all, for that matter. The devs over at Embark do a really good job balancing, so I'm going to quit yapping. We're going to get right into this and rank some of these weapons. I'm actually really excited for this. Alright, starting things out strong with the AKM. This one's pretty interesting. It hasn't really received a lot of love. I remember when it got its sight not too long ago, the red dot. That was a pretty big deal and a lot of people used it. But right now, man, I'm seeing a lot of Famas's even after the nerf. The pike buff was very significant. And of course the FCAR is very direct competition. And I would say when compared to all three of those, I think the AKM is probably the weakest. So it's not a bad weapon. I want to make it very clear, but it's not quite there. So I think I'm going to put comfortable in, or I think it's a comfortable B tier overall. I think maybe it could use a little bit more love. I don't know how they would change it. I mean, at a minimum, maybe revert the nerf they did before, give it some extra rounds back, kind of differentiate it from the other, rifle-style weapons on the medium. I really do like the AKM, but once again, right now, I definitely think it's not the greatest. It's not bad, but it could maybe use a little bit of love. Let me know what you guys think that should be. Alright, we got the M60, and this one's actually kind of a similar situation to the AKM here. So the M60 is in direct competition with, I would say, the Shack as well as the Lewis. And you're probably saying, Combo, the Shack, what do you mean? The Shack's very kind of close to medium range. And honestly, I'd argue the same thing for the M60. I showed it off in my video. You can be accurate with this thing at range, but the damage fall off is kind of ridiculous and you're not going to be super effective. And once again, dueling that Lewis at those closer ranges, you do have a slight advantage, but the Lewis is also just better at most other things. So once again, I think I'm going to stick this one in B tier. And then of course, when you're dealing with the Shack at those closer ranges, if the Shack user's hitting their shots, you're going to lose that duel. So it's not quite good at those longer ranges, not quite good at those closer ranges, and I would say even at those medium ranges, it still gets beat by the Lewis. So once again, not fantastic. I think it could maybe use a little bit of love. This one, I don't actually know what that would be. I think the big thing with the M60, although it doesn't really make sense, if they made this thing snappier, increase the aim down sight speed or something like that, I don't really know for sure. Once again, let me know what you guys think, because that's a pretty difficult one to balance there. Alright, we got the CL40 now, and this one actually got a pretty significant change. They didn't buff it, increase the damage or anything, but they made it a lot harder to hit a wall and kill yourself. And the biggest kicker here, and I'm so glad they did this, because this was so stupid before, it used to, if you shot the ground, it would do a hell of a lot more damage to you than it would to the enemy, which was super frustrating, and I never understood why it was in the game. So a lot of the time, if I was playing on medium, if I wanted to beat a CL40 user, I would literally just run up to them and stand at their feet, and they would just kill themselves, and they couldn't do anything about it. So that change, of course, you still do a little bit more damage to yourself, just so lights have a chance at those closer ranges. You still get a lot of trades. The damage on it's pretty good, not as good as it was at its peak, not quite A tier. I don't think it's average. I think I would also I'm not going to put everything in B tier, I promise, but I think CL40 for sure, as it stands now, probably about a B tier option. Good in some circumstances, very, very bad in others, but the circumstances that it does good in, once again, I think they kind of carry the weapon, which is the quintessential B tier. Alright, we have the pike. This is the elephant in the room here. I know a lot of people have probably kind of been waiting for this one, and I've had a lot of gameplay with it. I've dropped multiple 20 kill games in a row, which kind of crazy, and that's in quick cash. That's not ranked. I think a lot of people have the misconception when they say, I dropped 20 kills in a match. They're talking about a ranked tournament. No, I mean in a single game of quick cash, I'm dropping over 20 kills very consistently. This weapon is a light annihilator. Really good against heavies now. Really good against mediums. I hope I'm not jumping the gun here, but I think I'm going to stick it in S tier. And that's because, like, once you learn this weapon and once you really figure it out, close range, you can beat lights. Medium range, of course, you can beat other mediums. I would watch out for the Famas, because you can still kind of get bodied at that medium range. Same thing goes for the FCAR. Not so much the AKM. Sometimes the AKM. It kind of just depends. But once again, I hope I'm not jumping the gun on this. If you want context and like a video that shows this thing off pretty good, I recently did a video on the pike after the buff, and you'll see like there's situations where I'm like 1v3ing with this thing. Because if there's more than 2 lights on a team, that's 6 rounds and you have 15. Super, super powerful. Once again, I hope I'm not jumping the gun there. But once again, very strong. Alright, next up we have the flamethrower on the heavy. This one's tough, because the flamethrower, let me say this right now, if this was based on a fun factor, flamethrower would go in S tier 100%. But if we're going off a more competitive serious ranking, I don't think the flamethrower is D tier at all. It has a lot of synergies, right? You can use it with the winch claw, you can use it with charge and slam, you can use it with the new buffed lock bolt, which is also really good. But the thing that really holds back the flamethrower to me is because the damage is slightly delayed. It does a lot of damage, but you kind of have to ramp up to get there. And when you're fighting people, let's say you're fighting a heavy with, you know, even just like, for example, if you're fighting a heavy with even just an M60, chances are you're probably going to trade. And unless you get the jump on them, like a lot of people talk about the Pyromine, which I do myself, that's not something you do mid-gunfight. Like, that's something you lead with. And typically, if you're going to lead with a Pyromine and try to blow it up, you're doing that, you know, if you're going to get the first shot off. And because the range on this thing is not very great, I think it's about average. And I think in situations where the flamethrower is good, like those super crowded, tight spaces, flamethrower is absolutely disgusting. But yeah, get into an open field or like a cash out that's not inside a building, yeah, you're gonna have trouble, especially because every single build has a way to get away from it. Lights have dash, medium has jump pad, or also DMAT, and heavies of course have charge and slam to run away, goo gun, all these things. Goo gun can kind of backfire, but yeah, I think C tier right now. I would love to see the flamethrower get better. I just think maybe make it so the damage feels more immediate, but I don't know. What do you guys think? All right, next up we have the Shack. This one I'm super excited about. I'm gonna stick this right in A tier. I think the Shack is a very well-balanced weapon. I don't think it's too strong. I don't think it's too weak. And at the end of the day, it's unique. The 2-bullet factor of this weapon is really fun. And I think it adds a very unique skill curve to the game because there's a lot of techniques you can do. Like you can aim to the left if a target's turning a corner, and you can like lead your shots. Like the weapon will like lead the shots for you. I kind of showed that off in my video a little bit. The recoil is pretty manageable. It's fun to use. You can tap fire it. And most importantly, you know, this weapon's pretty simple to use, but there's quite a large skill gap. I've noticed, like, playing against people who are really good with the Shack, you know, if I'm dueling them with anything else, even if I'm using the Shack myself, like, you can tell if somebody's good. You know what I mean? Like, you can actually lock in and land headshots with this thing, and that is the skill gap. The weapon's easy to pick up on the surface, but it has a lot of room to grow, and when you do, once again, Shack is one of the better weapons in the game. But as we're about to talk about, you know, the Shack is good at those close-to-close medium ranges, but medium range, or rather close range, there's a weapon that kind of kicks everything out the window, and we're going to get into that one next. But for the Shack, I'd say A tier. Alright, next up we have the SA-1216, and I wasn't exactly subtle about my foreshadowing here. I'm going to stick this thing right in S tier, and a lot of people are probably looking at me right now like, Combo, what are you talking about? At higher levels of competitive, you're going to be seeing the SA-1216 a ton. That is because right behind the M11, which we'll talk about in a bit, the damage per second on that 1216 is absolutely disgusting. Now, I want to make this very clear. They did change it so you can't, you know, cancel the cocking animation or like the racking animation with a quick melee. However, it does still work with your specialization. So if you're using like a mesh shield or a winch claw, you can still fire those 4 shots, use your specialization, pull the target to you, and fire another 4. And once again, the damage on this is just absolutely nuts. Doesn't take a whole lot of aiming, very forgiving, tons of shots in the magazine. And once again, just talking about that damage output, you know, even in an open field, you can poke with this. Not ideal by any means, but you're heavy, so you can close that gap, you know, with this one. I know that probably sounds kind of hypocritical when you're looking at the flamethrower, but the 1216 will beat the flamethrower, I'd say, just about 90% of the time. So yeah, as it stands now, 1216, Still a very powerful weapon. Gotta stick it in S tier. Alright, we got the Dagger now. Now this is another one where like I almost wish I could make 2 rankings here, so I'm gonna kind of keep it about the same. So on console, I would put the Dagger in C tier because, you know, on console you don't typically have as high of a sensitivity. It's a little tougher to get those face stabs and like flick around and hit crazy shots. It's still good. You can definitely be successful with it. There's quite a bit of skill expression. You know, regardless of what people say, the Dagger is not easy to use, or every single person would use it. I still think there's a lot of skill expression with this weapon. However, on PC, I'm going to stick this thing in B tier, potentially even A tier. I'm not entirely sure. That's because, right, those face stabs, being able to flick around, and the range on the Dagger is actually crazy on that heavy attack. And Embark kind of buffed it in this patch, where now you can tell when you're fully charged up with that heavy attack, which is really good, because before I would like whiff heavies, because I think I was fully charged and I wasn't. So yeah, Dagger right now on console, I'd put it in C tier. On PC, I'd put it in B tier. Once again, the burst damage on this thing is absolutely nuts. Of course, this does get countered by some of these close range melee weapons. Why is my Outlook sending me messages? What the heck, man? But yeah, as it stands right now, Dagger, very powerful weapon, would definitely stick it in B tier. Alright, next up we got one of my favorite weapons in the game. I am a diehard supporter of the 93R. Gonna stick this thing right in A tier. Recent buffs in Season 5 made a huge difference. The big one being able to 2-burst lights, assuming you are in with that optimal range. Being able to 2-burst lights is very powerful. This thing is also really good at ranges, if you know how to aim them. Once again, I showed this off in my 93R video. I think it's one of my better videos, honestly. But yeah, you can use this thing at like medium range to even long range on occasion. Really good at those closer ranges. You know, pretty forgiving for the most part. Damage is great. This thing, especially for me, I don't know what it is. It is a headshot machine. It's basically like having a pocket Famas. So, with all that being said, very, very powerful. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because, once again, I think it's really good. And if you don't believe me, go try it because it's a good weapon. So, yeah, for right now, I would say 93R definitely A tier. All right, next up we have the dual blades, and this is where I start getting shit because I'd be surprised, man. There's a lot of dual blade mains in the finals, and I respect all of you. You guys have more patience than like anybody I've ever met in my life. However, gonna have to put the dual blades in F tier. Nah, I'm just fucking with you, man. We're gonna put them in C tier. So after the buff to the dual blades that allowed them to reflect shots more accurately, they also, I think, increased the swing speed a tiny bit and the lock-on mechanism. Once again, I'm not a big fan of the dual blades. I did do a video on these not too long ago where I just tried to make the worst loadout possible and actually had a little bit of success. Actually, quite a bit of success, so maybe there's something I don't know about the dual blades. I'll be honest with you. I've always been more of a riot shield player myself, but I can see the appeal. Once again, I still think if I were to change these in any way, during the swing animation, you should be able to stop at any point and start blocking. That would also differentiate it from the riot shield. Embark, I doubt you're listening, but if you are, please make this happen. This would make the dual blades so much better, especially because you take damage while you're blocking. I should be able to cancel my swing at any point. That would also make it a lot more skill-based, right? If somebody's shooting at me, I can like time my reflex on them. Please let me do this, Embark. It would make me feel like a ninja. Please do it. But as it stands right now, dual blades, gonna put them in C tier. Alright, now we got the double barrel, or the SH1900. I'm gonna stick this one right in A tier. Don't think this is quite S tier because, once again, the burst damage on this is the best in the game, right behind the Dagger. However, the difference, similar to the Dagger, although this is hit scan and you have 2 shots instead of 1, and I still think it's a little bit better at those close ranges because you don't have to be behind targets. This is a very unforgiving weapon. If you miss a shot like completely, it's going to be really hard to win that fight unless you're fighting a light. And even then, if they're not close enough to you, you're not going to be able to one-shot them. Either way though, this is still a very, very, very powerful weapon. Once again, I showed this off in a video pretty recently. On stream, actually, I was able to duel like a full 3-stack of top 500 players, and I was holding my own with this thing like pretty well. Like actually, I team wiped him twice, like solo with this thing. I don't say that to flex, I say that to prove this weapon is good, but man, you gotta be on your A game. If you're not good with like punishing single shot weapons, you probably hate this thing. But if you've taken the time to really learn it, or you like to sit in the corner with invis, because that's also an option, you probably really like this weapon. But for me, I would definitely say A tier. Alright, next up we got the Sledgehammer, and this one I would say overall, right, I think the Sledgehammer is the jack of all trades for melee weapons, right? You can break down walls, you do quite a bit of damage, you can one-shot lights, which is always nice. However, you know, once again, I don't think it's quite... It's kind of hard to say. If you're playing against a full team of sledges, it can be very powerful, but there's so many ways to cause destruction. I mean, charge and slam, right? And you are giving up that range factor. As it stands right now, man, I'm really torn here. We're going to tentatively put in A tier, and, you know, actually I think I'm going to keep it in A tier. Once again, you have a lot of burst damage, you can really manipulate the map. I think that's the biggest upside to the Sledgehammer, is you can completely customize the battlefield to however you want it. Once again, you're losing that range factor, and the Winch Claw did get nerfed. However, with the newly buffed Lock Bolt, the Sledgehammer, you know, that's a whole nother way. You can cause some destruction. So once again, a lot of damage, a lot of versatility, and for that reason, I'm going to stick it in A tier. But if you have an argument against that, please, I would love to hear it. All about hearing your guys' feedback, especially on this one, because I feel like that's going to vary a lot from player to player. But for now, Sledgehammer, A tier. Alright, next up we have the FCAR, and this one's been seeing a lot of use recently. I see a lot of top players using it, I see it in my lobbies all the time. Still think the FCAR has the best tap fire in the game by far. I would say it's better than its AKM counterpart, so I'm going to stick that right into A tier. It is a little punishing. They did buff how many rounds it has, so I mean that's always a positive. One thing I still hate though is the visual recoil. So the first 5 shots or so, this thing will kick like a mule. Of course you can learn the pattern, which I'd like to think I've done a pretty good job at, but when you first start using it, right, that recoil is kind of crazy. I talked about this in my video as well, but once again, once you learn that, it's really not that bad. The damage is great, and once it levels out, man, this thing's a laser beam, like headshot machine. Like probably the easiest weapon in the game to hit headshots with, in my opinion. So for that reason, overall, you know, great at everything. Not quite the best in class, and we'll talk about that, but very solid weapon. Would highly recommend it, so I'd say that's a pretty solid A tier pick. Alright, this is an interesting one. So we have the Cerberus. Recently just did a video on this one. The Cerberus did receive quite a few buffs in this mid-season update. One of those was increasing the pellet damage by 1 for every pellet, which sounds like kind of minuscule on the surface, but this thing has a lot of pellets, so it was actually a pretty substantial buff. I don't know the number, maybe if somebody in the comments does off the top of their head, I don't know it, but you can definitely feel it. The biggest issue, they did buff the reload, but it's so minor. Jinko actually did a wonderful video about this, showcasing the reload speed, like before and after. I'll tell you guys, even in game, you can't notice it. I think this weapon needs a lot more reload speed. However, with the buff to damage and the fact that, you know, once again, this weapon was really good at taking out lights before, now this thing is a light destroyer. It's almost like the double barrel for the medium. So for that reason, I think I'm going to stick it in B tier. The biggest things holding back the Cerberus. This thing sucks against heavies. Sucks against heavies. If you can't take him out in all 3 shots, you're done. Like, you're just going to lose that duel. And also the range, man. I don't want this to be the next model. Like, please, Embark, let's not do that. But it definitely needs more range. So, as it stands now, oh, that's another thing they did. I forgot about this. Another thing they did is they brought in the spread on the shotgun a little bit to make it more consistent. But man, we need more range. This thing needs a lot more range. Or maybe at those longer distances, like let me group my pellets more, so maybe the shots don't do a lot of damage at range, but I can set people on fire. Overall though, pretty good weapon. I would put it in B tier, but maybe needs a little bit more love. Alright, next up we have the KS-23. I stand by this in saying this is one of the highest skill gap weapons in the game, if you're good with it. This weapon is very powerful. However, this weapon, similar to the Cerberus, does in fact struggle against heavies quite a bit. Very good against mediums, very good against lights. A lot of versatility, you can snipe people across the map with it. Does have a little bit of travel time. The biggest issue with this thing, Embark. I love you to death. Why is it that when I aim down sights with the KS-23, my shots don't always go where I'm aiming? Can we just make it so when we're aiming down sights we have perfect accuracy? Like, please. I understand this weapon's supposed to be almost more like a cannon, and that kind of fits the aesthetic, but it feels really bad when I'm aiming down sights and my shot doesn't do what it's supposed to. It's a shotgun, I get it, but it only shoots 1 shot. So that's just my opinion. Until that gets fixed, gonna put it in B tier. If that ever changes though, I could definitely see an argument for A tier, especially because you can break down walls, which is kind of a lesser known feature of the KS, but as it stands right now, gonna have to stick it in B tier. Would love to see this thing get some more love. Alright, next up we have the Deagles. We're getting into all the heavy weapons here. Gonna stick these right in A tier. Deagles do a ton of damage at close range, especially if you're pacing your shots, which I showed off in my video. Pace your shots, stop spamming them. Also, if you crouch before you shoot, the accuracy basically goes to perfect, like there's no bloom when you're shooting, and you can actually use that to snipe people across the map. I show that off on stream quite often. The Deagles are snipers, man. I mean, you can contest like LH1s with the Deagles. I'm not kidding. If you're confident and you can hit your shots, man, you can give them a run for their money. Of course, you don't have that same zoom factor that they do, but either way, very, very powerful weapon. Not quite the best in slot, but very well-rounded and kind of similar to the Shack here, man. Very balanced weapon. I wouldn't really buff it or change anything about them. I think they're very good as they are. So for that reason, I'm going to stick them in A tier. All right, now we have the M11, and this is where people call me a crybaby. I'm going to stick this thing right in S tier. I'm going to explain myself. Don't really think I need to too much. This thing has the highest DPS in the entire game. Hopefully I'm not wrong on that, or I'm going to look like an asshole. Highest DPS in the game. Doesn't require a lot of skill to use. Super deep magazine. The hip fire is absolutely insane. And once again, if you're fighting basically anyone, I'd say the only thing the M11 struggles against is maybe shotguns. Maybe. Unless, you know, on the light class, or the light build rather, if you're fighting another light, if you just hip fire, you're probably going to win that duel. If you're fighting a double barrel, you might lose, but if you keep your distance, man, you're fine. And with the addition of the red dot, you can use this thing at pretty long ranges and still have some success. Of course, nothing like the XP54, but man, once again, the damage on this thing is absolutely insane. I know we've all experienced that light who runs around with invisibility, pulls up on the point, pulls this thing out and wipes your entire team. Once again, very powerful weapon. In my opinion, doesn't take a ton of skill to use, and the reward you get from it is very high. So for that reason, gonna stick it in S tier. Alright, now we have the LH1, and this one may or may not surprise people. It actually got nerfed. The rate of fire got taken down by 10, and the damage actually got reduced by 2, which in my opinion makes it D tier. Now, once again, I'm doing that same joke a lot, but no, this is still S tier. In my opinion, right, they reduced the rate of fire. That's really not even a bad thing. And you're probably like, Combo, that reduces the damage. Yeah, up close, when you're fighting like a heavy, right, and you're spamming your shots and hitting them, doing a ton of damage, yeah, that got nerfed. But I talk about this in my video a lot too. What kills people's aim with the LH1 is they go to like as far away as they can and they spam this thing as fast as they can, and they have no accuracy. The reduced rate of fire for a lot of people is actually going to make this weapon feel a lot better, because now they can't spam as fast and they can actually like recover from the recoil and hit targets. And also, once again, the damage change, 54 to 52, you know, it really doesn't do anything. I might be saying that number wrong. Actually, I know I'm saying that number wrong. Regardless, it was a very small change. I think it was like 2 damage. I can't notice it at all. LH1 is still incredibly powerful, so definitely an S tier pick. Alright, next up we got the MGL, and I just made a video about this one. This one's pretty interesting. MGL has a pretty big learning curve. It's really bad at some things, pretty good at some things, but once again, there's just so much weird stuff with this weapon. I don't even feel qualified to rank it, because it's so weird. I'm going to stick it in C tier for now, just because, like, I feel like if you take the time to learn it, I always think of, like, Andrewstown. I can't remember, there's another guy people were saying is, like, the king of the MGL. Let me know in the comment section down below, I'll shout him out. But once again, I don't really want to speak on this too much. This weapon is super freaking weird. Super fun, I want to make that clear. But once again, I have no clue how to use this thing to its fullest extent. I did really good in my video with it, somehow. Once again, I was just kind of shooting and hoping, and I made a pretty good guide on it. You know, I referenced a lot of other videos making that, because once again, not my my forte. But yeah, C tier for me, just because I don't exactly know how to rank it. So I'll leave this one to you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. All right, now we got the Matter, and this one here, once again, very solid weapon. I think I'm gonna stick this one in A tier as well. This is very similar to the 93R here, in that you can use this weapon, have a lot of success. It's really good at those closer ranges, and if you want to be a nuisance, you can even poke people across the map. This weapon's a lot more forgiving than the double barrel, so if you don't like the double barrel, but you want to use a shotgun, the Matter might be your next best bet. Jeez, I can't speak. Because once again, good at close range, pretty decent at medium range, and very forgiving, right? The spread isn't too bad. You have 8 shots. The damage is good. If you want to know the kill combos, you can watch my video on it. But once again, very solid weapon, pretty user-friendly for the most part, so I'd highly recommend picking it up and giving it a try. So, A tier for me. Alright, so now we have the Revolver, and this one really hurts me. When the game first came out, the Revolver, as well as the throwing knives, were actually my main weapons that I'd use. However, with the recent buff to the pike, I can't lie to you guys, I think I'm going to have to put the Revolver in B tier. I think of course, now I will say this, the headshot multiplier on the Revolver is very good. It leaves the lights at 1 HP. Once again, there's some really good interactions you can do if you can land headshots, but this weapon is just so unforgiving. Once again, if you're good with it, this weapon, I genuinely mean this, S tier. If you're good with the Revolver, this beats just about every single weapon in the game without a doubt. But once again, you're not going to be playing perfect 100% of the time. Nobody does. And because the pike recently got buffed, and I think it does everything the Revolver does, and maybe even a little bit better sometimes, other than that headshot damage, gonna stick it in B tier. If we see the pike get nerfed, or maybe the Revolver gets buffed, I could see myself moving it up, but as it stands right here, man, once again, I wish it was better. Embark, give this thing faster aim down sight speed, give it more reload, I don't entirely know, but as it stands now, I think I'm gonna have to put it in B tier. Alright, next up we have the Riot Shield, and this one, I think I'm gonna stick in C tier as well. Riot Shield is very good. Here's the difference, right? If you're playing with a team, if you're playing with people you have comms with, I would actually stick the Riot Shield in A tier because this is a very powerful support weapon. You can use it to draw aggro, you can use it to defend areas very well. However, trying to solo queue with the Riot Shield is a pretty painful experience, unless you're using flashbangs and just memeing on people, which is like one of my favorite things in the world. As it stands now, Riot Shield I would maybe consider putting in B tier, but I can't really do that, you know. I want this tier list to be kind of, you know, more brutally honest and more like, you know, hard on the weapons, like not giving it the best case scenario. I think, you know, in a one-on-one duel, I would give it to the Riot Shield over the dual blades. But once again, as it stands right now, Riot Shield is very powerful. You know, dude, I'm really struggling. You know what? I am going to stick it in B tier. I do think the Riot Shield is better than the dual blades in my opinion. I am going to stick it in B tier because, once again, factoring in the ability to block flashbangs and explosions and things like that, I do think that's a pretty powerful quality. I don't know. I'm going to leave this one to you guys as well. Let me know what you think. Riot Shield, should it be in the C tier or the B tier? Or maybe S tier. I don't know, man. You tell me. If you can defend it, I'm all about it. You know, it's like changing my mind. But yeah, as it stands now, I think I'm going to stick the Riot Shield in B tier. Alright, now we got the bow. The bow is really cool. I had a lot of people in my last tier list tell me that I ranked this thing way too low. And after using it, man, I can kind of see why. I can see the appeal to the bow. Before I had it in C tier, but I think I'm gonna move it up to B tier now, just because like the bow has one quality that makes it very powerful, and it's actually better than the sniper in this regard, and that is you don't have to wait the entire time to shoot around. So if a target's weak or they're right in your face, I don't have to wait to pull the thing all the way back. I can just shoot it like at half charge if I want to, do a little bit of damage, and if I hit a headshot, I mean, really, the headshot multiplier on the bow is pretty fantastic, and you can take out targets pretty easily. This thing is a menace against heavies and lights, you know, being able to take them out in those 3 shots, which we'll talk about the sniper here in a minute. That's not necessarily unique to it anymore, but as it stands now, the bow is a pretty powerful weapon. I definitely think if you take the time to learn it, this weapon can be very powerful, and at closer ranges, I would say it's a little better than the sniper in some cases, but yeah, we'll talk about the sniper later. As it goes for the bow, I would stick it in B tier. B for bow. Who guessed? Alright, next up we have the model. And the model actually just received a pretty substantial nerf and also kind of a buff simultaneously. Let's talk about it. So, the model had its damage reduced per pellet by a pretty decent margin. You can definitely feel the difference in the damage. However, they buffed the range, so now it's back to where it was pre-patch, meaning at those longer ranges, you're not going to have the same drop-off. Before the nerf, I still think the model was S tier for sure. However, honestly guys, after the nerf, I think I'm going to stick it in A tier, and I'll be real with you, I don't really have a problem with it anymore. I think this has like kind of been the buff that's kind of reined the model into place where like, it's still very powerful, but I don't think it's like as oppressive as some of the other options that we're seeing in S tier. So, I mean, I could still see the argument for S tier, or maybe even B tier if you think Embark over-nerfed it. But as it stands right now, I'm actually kind of happy with the nerf that happened. Kind of saw it coming to an extent, but let me know what you guys think in the comments on this one. I could be crazy. Just kind of my take and my experience. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. All right, next up we got the spear. Now, if this was a power shift tier list, S tier, the spear is absolutely fantastic. Hop on the platform, use the heavy attack and kill everybody. But in ranked and normal matches, gonna have to stick this one right in C tier. Pretty average. I feel like the spear and the dual blades, funny enough, they came out in the same season. I feel like they go hand in hand. They're fun, but there's just better options in class. So the spear, the sledgehammer is just better overall. There's more utility there. Spear does a little bit more damage if you can land that heavy attack, but once again, I would take the sledgehammer. No. I would take the sledgehammer over the spear every day of the week. And I want to see the spear be better. One thing that I pitched that could maybe make this thing more unique is what if they gave it like a special heavy attack while you're airborne? So like while you're in the air, you can like cancel your momentum and like slam straight down and like pin somebody to the ground and like stun them. That would be badass. That was my idea with the spear. And I feel like that would make it a lot more hype too. That's just my thought. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. But as it stands right now, C tier I think is pretty appropriate for the spear. All right, next up we have the sniper, and man, let me tell you, sniper is one of my favorite weapons in the game. And I said this in my sniper video not too long ago. I thought it was in a good spot. Never in my life did I think Embark was going to buff this and allow you to kill heavies in 3 body shots. But because they did that, boop, I'm gonna put the sniper right in S tier. Being able to take out heavies in 3 body shots is it's so nice. The quality of light change there is just, God, it's absolutely fantastic, right? Like, before, when I saw a heavy with the sniper, if I didn't land a headshot on that first shot, I just ran away, because I was going to lose that duel. But now, I feel like I can actually challenge them. And some people might think that's wrong, like, you should not be able to fight a heavy at close range with the sniper. However, you know, I don't really have a take on that one. I'm just telling you how it feels, and it feels pretty good, especially the rate of fire increase as well. So, pretty substantial buff to the sniper. You know, because of this, though, I never see them getting rid of the travel time, and I understand it. It was really annoying before, so as it stands now, sniper, pretty powerful. I love the buff. I can maybe see it getting a little change, but I don't know. I haven't seen too many snipers recently, so as it stands now, I think I'm gonna leave it in A tier. All right, next up we got the sword, and the sword actually had its freaking nerf reverted. Sword mains rejoice. Everybody else, keep crying. I'm not saying that if you hate the sword. I'm saying that the sword is this thing will spark some emotions, let me tell you. I think after the buff or the revert of the nerf, I think the sword is also A tier. Amazing for burst damage. Of course, it does take a lot of skill to use. Since the, rework back to it, I think it's a little bit better than the dagger because you can hit multiple targets. I think it's a little bit easier to use than the dagger. And, once again, because you have that extra mobility when you use the dash with the sword, it's really, really hard to hit sword users if they know what they're doing. It can be pretty toxic to play against. So I'd say overall, sword, probably an A tier pick. All right, next up we have the Lewis gun. And this is another one. I'm going to stick this one right in A tier. I think this goes hand in hand with the Shack. I think these are both balanced pretty good overall. Once again, Lewis, really good at those longer ranges. Pretty damn good at those closer ranges. Doesn't do like an obscene amount of damage, but what makes the Lewis really good is the tap fire. They gave it a red dot, and more than anything, man, super consistent. Like, super, super, super consistent weapon overall. So, as it stands right now, I don't think I have to talk too much about it. Lewis gun, super consistent. I made a really good guide on this one as well, if you want to get maybe a little bit better with it. But yeah, easy to use, consistent, and really good when compared to its counterparts. So, I think I'm going to put that one in A tier. All right, throwing knives. This one's interesting. The throwing knives are really good. I would say they were easy to use because you have infinite ammo, but that would be very disingenuous. I will say, with some of the recent buffs to weapons, it is getting a lot harder to use throwing knives. With the popularity of things like the pike, especially, the Shack is really good. The double barrel is really good. I don't know, man. I think I'm going to have to put throwing knives in B tier right now. I think last season I'd have put them in A tier just because, once again, there wasn't as much competition. But with the popularity of these close range weapons getting more and more prevalent, I think where it stands right now, I'd put them in B tier. At the end of the day, right, the travel time is what really kills them. I showed off on stream, right, you can absolutely pop off with these. Like, they're still very good, but kind of like the dagger, right? There's options that do more. Like, for example, I'd say even like the you know, the double barrel. There's things that do what this thing does, other than the fact that you can shoot these at a little bit longer range with the heavy attack, just a little bit better. It still has a lot of skill expression, and you can still be powerful with it, but it might need a little bit of a bump if it wants to move into A tier. But as it stands right now, very good weapon. It hurts me to say it, this is actually my favorite weapon in the game, so I'd like to think I'm qualified to speak on this. It's also the internet though, so that doesn't really exist. But as it stands now, I think throwing knives, I'm gonna put these ones in B tier. Alright, next up we have the Famas, and this was one of the weapons that actually got nerfed in the most recent patch. However, I'm still going to stick it in S tier. I still think it's probably the best. Now, you can make that argument with the pike, but what separates the Famas, right? It did lose a little bit of damage, which really, to me, right, it didn't really change any significant interactions. The recoil on this thing is non-existent. You can still snipe people across the map. The hip fire is absolutely amazing, and it's really good at taking out lights. It does struggle against heavies a little bit if you can't hit your headshots, but I mean, once again, you have so many shots, and, you know, unless you're fighting a shack at like, you know, at like super close range, the heavy doesn't really have too many options to take care of it. So once again, I still think overall the Famas, you know, even with the pike, they go hand in hand. It's kind of hard to choose which, but yeah, right now I think the Famas is definitely still S tier. But let me know what you think in the comments. Alright, next up we have the V9S, and I think I'm going to stick this one right in A tier. V9S is a really powerful weapon, and it has been for a super long time. Very good with invis, good at range, although, you know, it does do better at those closer ranges. I don't really see, like, a great argument to use this over the 93R, and vice versa. I think they kind of fill similar roles. The 93R is a little bit better at those longer ranges, but the V9S has a little bit better hip fire and is better at those closer ranges. So these two kind of go hand in hand, right? If you prefer close range, use the V9S. If you prefer longer range, use the 93R. But I digress. Very powerful weapon, V9S. I would definitely stick this one in A tier. And finally, we come to our very last weapon of the video. We have the XP54, which I'm also going to stick in A tier. This one, kind of like we talked about before, how, you know, you have the shack on the heavy, which is really well balanced. Then you have the SA1216, which is just really broken and nuts. So that's kind of how I feel about the XP54 and the M11. I will say, XP54, still very powerful, a lot better than the M11 at those longer ranges. However, on light, there's better options for longer range. You have the LH1. Even to those super close ranges, you're going to get beat by the double barrel. However, I will say this, I know it sounds like I'm ragging on the weapon. The XP54 is the ultimate jack of all trades, right? It's really not bad at anything. And for that reason, I can't think of a better place to put it than A tier. You know, once again, I think it's in a very good spot balancing-wise, and with some changes to potentially the M11 and the LH1, you know, I could maybe even see an argument to use this weapon over them. So with that being said, XP54, I think this is an A tier pick. Anyways, everyone, I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to let me know in the comments section down below. I always love reading your guys' comments on these videos, especially the tier list, right? Because this is literally just a time for us to chat and talk about the meta and how things have changed. And also, you know, it might not seem like it, but, you know, this community is pretty small. Embark does listen to its fans, maybe sometimes a little bit too much than it should. I'm also guilty of that, right? I've had some pretty bad takes in the past. But once again, this is a time for us to talk about it and discuss the meta and how we'd like to see things change or maybe remain the same. If this is your favorite meta, I completely understand it, because I really do think, like, you know, Embark does a really good job at balancing weapons. This game has a lot, and all of them fill very specific roles, so I think it's good to give them some slack, right? This is not an easy job. So as it stands now, great job, Embark. Keep up the good work. It's interesting with the pike. We'll see how this goes. Once again, let me know what you think in the comments on this one. But I don't know. We'll just kind of have to see how this plays out. Things are still pretty young. These are more first impressions. But anyways, guys, this has been Akimbo. Thank you so much for sticking to the end of the video. If you did, leave a thumbs up and do all that stuff. You know, I'm not even going to say that. That's cringe. If you stayed to the end of the video, or end of the video, holy shit. If you stayed till the end of the video, leave a comment saying calcium, and I'll pin your comment if you're the first person to do it. But yeah, this has been Akimbo. Stay home, stay safe, and yeah, peace out, everybody. Later.